podcast, everyone. I'm Devin Rose. Thanks for listening to the first podcast and for all the great feedback you gave. In case you're curious, the time-lapse intro video is actually of Cologne, Germany, where World Youth Day was held about 5 years ago. And in the background is the cathedral at Cologne. So I thought that was an appropriate video to use for these podcasts. Today we have a very exciting topic, and that's the question of, did Jesus have brothers and sisters? Another way of asking it, was Mary perpetually a virgin or not? That's what the Catholic Church teaches. Most Protestants don't believe it. What's the truth? Well, the Catholic teaching seems to contradict the Scriptures. Several places you see where it says Jesus' brothers and sisters. So that seems to be a contradiction right there. Well, there's actually a pretty simple explanation for that. One is Hebrew and Aramaic do not have a word for cousin, and that's the language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic, as well as his apostles. So they often used brother to mean cousin or a more distant relation. And then, of course, the Scriptures were translated into Greek, or were transcribed in Greek, and so they just kept that word brother. But oftentimes in the Bible, brother's used to mean a more distant relative. Second passage that would seem to contradict Mary's perpetual virginity is Matthew 1:25. This is the verse that says, Joseph had no relations with Mary until Jesus was born. And the explanation for that is the word until is used a little bit differently in the Bible than it is in our normal English usage. It doesn't imply anything after the fact. It only means leading up to some point in time, such and such did or did not happen. And in this case, Mary was a virgin during that time. Turns out she was also a virgin after that time. A third point in favor of Mary's perpetual virginity, the early church almost unanimously supported it. Even if you ignore what's known as the Proto-Evangelium of James, which is a very early document, you have Origen, Saint Hilary of Poitiers, Athanasius, Jerome, many other saints, all affirming this teaching. It was ancient within the church's tradition, even if the Scriptures never explicitly state it. So you have the early church holding this doctrine. Another point, the fourth point, that's based really on just reason. Remember when Jesus was on the cross and he gives his mother Mary to St. John the Apostle. And it says Mary went to live under St. John's roofs. Well, what we can learn from that is St. Joseph must have died. We can deduce that, because otherwise she would have lived with her husband, St. Joseph. We can also deduce, though, that she must not have had children, sons and daughters. Otherwise, they would have taken care of her, not some strange person. Granted, Jesus knew St. John, but if she had children of her own, they would take care of her. So the fifth point, last one, is somewhat surprising for most Protestants, and that's Martin Luther, Ulrich Zwingli, and John Calvin all affirmed Mary's perpetual virginity. They all believed in this teaching. These are the three founding fathers of Protestantism, the men who coined the ideas sola scriptura, the Bible alone, sola fide, faith alone. They had no problem believing this. John Calvin even argued along St. Jerome's arguments in the 4th century. There was a guy named Helvidius who was attacking this doctrine of Mary's perpetual virginity, and St. Jerome was arguing back and forth with him. Well, Calvin agreed with Jerome, and what's ironic is Helvidius' arguments are the same ones that Protestants use today. So little do Protestants realize that John Calvin himself would be refuting them if he knew they were using these arguments. So this is an ancient teaching. Reading the Bible, it's understandable if you didn't have any other idea of the church's tradition, or even your own Protestant tradition, that you would think Mary had other children with Joseph. But indeed, it's not the case. All right, that does it for this episode. Keep in mind, who are Jesus' brothers and sisters? Well, the Scriptures say that we are. And both Protestants and Catholics are brothers and sisters in Christ. We want to become unified in Christ. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I'm Devin Rose. Until next time.